problems at the global level. Not only the trade to economy related, but also it's threatening the peace. What do you think? How this situation can evolve and what we should do?
It is a very serious situation because, while many of the policies we are seeing right now have been there for many years, including attacks on Afghanistan, Iraq, and other countries in the past, I think what's different is that officially now the President of the United States has declared that international law is irrelevant. In an interview with the New York Times on the 7th of January, he was asked, what laws or what regulations do you respect? And he says, only my own mind, only my own morality. I do not need international law.
Do you think, here I just want to interrupt you, do you think the moral values which President Trump is trying to accept or showing to the world can qualify for this, such statements?
Well, that's obviously up to the American people to decide. But I think if the man in the strongest position in the world basically says that now the principle of might makes right,
yes,
is relevant, then that could create is creating a very dangerous precedent for everybody. Everybody can now say, I don't like my neighbor, I will kidnap him. And, so I think it's a breakdown of international law, which is very severe.
And especially when we see, he is also threatening the Greenland. So and you are sitting in the Europe, how do you see like this, what is happening in the Greenland and why he is threatening? Because Denmark is the other NATO ally.
Well, I think he has a very peculiar idea of what American interests and rights are. He thinks he can define, which raw materials of which country should belong to the United States or even which territory. I think this has created an incredible crisis in the European Union because his insistence that he wants to own Greenland, is throwing even the strongest Atlanticists in disarray.
Yes, and I think this attitude is not creating problem for the opponents but also the friends. That's why there is a saying these days, so foes and friends are changing. The friends are becoming the few, and like the alliances like the NATO has been weakened over the time. So now going forward to our other participant, Dr. Andrew Kazanov. So, Doctor, when you look in the specifically, we will start with the Eurasia, because you are keenly observing this Eurasia, and one of the major conflict is going on in Eurasia, and Russia is the part of that. So when you look at the context in Eurasia, so what Mr. Trump want to do, or the USA want to do, especially on the one side, when sometimes he says, I want to negotiate with the President Putin, and then suddenly he says, oh, we are sending more weapons to the Ukraine, and then he is inviting the Central Asian states heads. So how do you see what America wants to achieve in the Eurasia, especially in the context of the Ukraine?
Well, if you take the Ukrainian situation in particular, it is clear that President Trump wants to keep his foot in the doorway. He definitely wants to protect U.S. interests in Ukraine, and this is something which relates to potential sales of U.S. weapons to Ukraine through Europeans, but also an attempt to control a lot of the Ukrainian economic infrastructure. Trump has signed the so-called rare elements deal with Zelensky, which allows the United States to basically possess a lot of natural resources and also the transportation system in Ukraine. Definitely he hopes that American companies will be directly engaged in the post-conflict reconstruction of the country. So for him, it's business. It's an important business, and he wants U.S. interests to be preserved. I would also add that, of course, he cannot see, at least he's not willing to see the conflict resolving on the terms of the Russian Federation, because that would mean a victory for Vladimir Putin, not for Donald Trump. And Trump wants to have his own victory, his own imprint in the solution of the Ukrainian crisis. And I think that guides him, that guides his attitudes to both Russia and to Ukraine. He wants to push both sides and to have a settlement on his terms, not on the terms that can come from either Moscow or from Kiev.
And I think there is you mentioned, so that business, and there's different reports. So many American companies, the Zionist company, they have purchased the vast land in Ukraine, and they are controlling the territory of the Ukraine. So President wants to protect them also. But the fundamental question is, when he claims he wants a Nobel Peace Prize, but he comes with the term and condition not to end the conflict, to get the maximum for the US, how it can be qualified, these things?
Well, I think that there are pieces of both bad news and good news about President Trump. The bad news is that his mission is primarily destructive. He destroys the remnants of the old world order more than anyone else in the world.
That is very important observation. Destructive attitude are his ambitions.
Yeah, and some would say that this is creative destruction or some positive destruction, but that doesn't change the sense of the word. It is about destruction. It's about destroying institutions, regimes, international law, as it has already been mentioned here. So it's about destruction. However, I think the good news, if we are looking for the good news, is that he's not ready to engage the United States into a really large-scale conflict. And we saw it in many cases. Even if you take Venezuela, he's not ready for a real regime change there. He is concerned about the United States being forced to start a ground operation. He doesn't want it. He doesn't want a major U.S. engagement in Iran. But it's one thing to bomb Iran, but it's another to have a ground operation, which would cost the United States a lot. So he is not ready to start a real war, at least intentionally. There might be, of course, a danger of an inadvertent escalation, which would ultimately get the United States into a large-scale
I will come back to you on the same question, but I will go to Madam Helga. So when Dr. Andrew Kantonov was talking about Russia does not want a war, but we have seen in the case of Iran, at the last moment, so Mr. Trump withdrew from the war. But that is one aspect. I want your comment on that. But the most fundamental thing I want to ask from you, you are working on the Palestine issue for a long time. And we see, so Israel is pushing USA to go for war with Iran. How do you see if President Trump announced a war with Iran, so what will be the impact on the Palestine people?
Well, I hate to say that the success of the so-called peace plan has left the Palestinians still with the same situation. I mean, in the so-called phase one, I think, I don't have the exact number now, but a lot of Palestinians have been killed, and the killing is going on in the West Bank. So I think, the situation, in my view, has not worked at all for the benefit of the Palestinians. And it's one of these issues where you really pull your hair and you say, what can be done? Why can the international community not come up with some way of intervening? Because, we have a genocide going on, which has been acknowledged by the highest courts of the world, the UN, the International Court of Justice, and the International Criminal Court. And the international community has been completely incapable of remedying the situation. And I think that poses a very serious question, that when there is no place anymore where suppressed people like the Palestinians, or there are other cases in the world, can go to an institution and receive right, then we are in a world which is characterized by the law of the jungle. And, it cries out for a reform of the international system. And I think that there will be a tremendous backlash, a blowback of what is going on, because what is happening right now is, I think we are seeing the beginning. You mentioned 100 years, things happened not 100 years since. I think it's much more fundamental. I think we are seeing an epochal collapse. An order which existed for 500 years in the form of colonialism
Yes.
is coming to an end, and the new shape is not yet visible. So we are in a sort of incredible tense moment where everything is possible.
No, but my question is, so if USA attack Iran, so will it bring some negative consequences for the Palestine? If yes, how then the world? But I don't have any trust in the world anymore, because Trump say there is no rule of law. So he openly say that. So what will be the implications for the Palestinian people?
Well, obviously it depends. If such a new attack occurs, temporarily, I hope Trump pulled back from it and said that the killing in Iran would have stopped, and therefore no need to intervene. If, however, remember in June it was like that, where basically there was a diplomatic process going on, and then out of the blue these attacks occurred. So I think everybody is not 100% sure if one can rely on these words of President Trump. If an attack occurs, I think the response probably would be much, much more significant than in June, because I think Iran, in the meantime, has strengthened its defenses. And, I don't want to even think that it could lead to a general war in the entire Middle East, in which case, naturally, the Palestinians would be the victim as well. But I think that I always said we cannot, given the strategic complexity of the situation, I don't think that the situation can be solved in the Middle East as such. There must be a new paradigm of international relations, because only if there is an understanding that the world is about to go to pieces, and that we need a new security and development architecture which takes into account the interest of every single country on the planet.
Yes, I think that would be happening in the coming years, and I will come back to with the same question again. But I just want to share with you information. So in the recent this conflict, when the U.S. was planning to attack Iran, Pakistan behind the scene also played a role to stop it, because Pakistan believed it cannot serve the purpose of anybody. And on Palestine issue, Pakistan is refused to USA to be the part of the peace plan, to send the troops there, because what they are doing, that was not the peace plan. So Pakistan's stance is that peace plan was to protect the people, not let the one party to kill the other. So Pakistan has refused to send its troops there. So I will go to Dr. Andrew Kantonov. As Madam Helga was talking about, the new architect and the new system definitely will emerge, and nobody can differ with Madam Helga this observation. So, and you are from Russia, and Russia and China, they are the two major pillars who are working for a long time to bring the fairness in the global system. How do you see the Russia and China can work together to build a new system which is based on the fairness and justice?
Well, I think that, first of all, the relations between the two nations remain one of the cornerstones of the global stability in the world today.
Yes.
Can you imagine, for example, if we had a very serious conflict between Moscow and Beijing? That would be a very important destabilizing factor in global politics. However, I think this is a relationship that is likely to endure. I think that even if we put aside the United States and the West at large, this relationship has its own foundations. two big nations sharing a long border, mutually complementary economic system. So there are many factors that bring Moscow and Beijing together.
Yeah.
But on top of that, I think that what Russia and China are doing jointly, they're experimenting with new models of multilateralism. If we are talking about groupings like BRICS or SCO, these are global labs where they try to test new approaches to dealing with international problems. Of course, you know, these bodies are still very nascent. I think they are fragile, and there is a lot of criticism about BRICS, about SCO. But nevertheless, I think that they might show examples of how various nations, larger nations and smaller ones, nations which are relatively wealthy and the nations which are relatively poor, nations from the global north and the global south can work together hand in hand with each other on shaping the new agenda. So I think that this is important. It's not the only source of the new ideas for the emerging world order. I don't want to say that Western institutions are irrelevant or that they cannot contribute anything, but I think that Russia and China can diversify the sources of ideas for the emerging world order. And in a way, it's not just about Russia and China. I mean, non-Western countries are now depriving the West of the former monopoly over concepts and plans for reshaping the international system. And this is important. I think that makes the system more representative and more democratic.
We have seen this at SCO level, so where the partnership approach and the Shanghai spirit is guiding. But a very quick question and I want a very quick answer. So if USA decide to attack Iran, so what would be the reaction from Russia?
Well, definitely Russia would condemn such an attack. It would raise this issue within the United Nations Security Council. I can imagine that Russia might enhance its cooperation with the Islamic Republic, including military technical cooperation, and definitely it will try to use its contacts in Washington to persuade President Trump to stop such a violation of the Iranian sovereignty.
Yeah, thank you. So we have to take a short break, although there was a very compelling discussion, but there we have to take a break. We'll see you after a short while. So welcome back. So where we were discussing how the global governance order is behaving or what is happening at a global level. So we will continue our discussion. And now we're coming back to Madam Helga. Madam, you started this when you say that so the new paradigm and the new architect will be emerging. Today I think the Canadian Prime Minister is in China. He specifically mentioned this in a briefing. So Canada is in China, and they are for mending their relationship. So it is a necessity for Canada. In the new world order, he used the word new world order, and it's very specifically said new, then take a pause, then said world, and then take a pause and said order. So that's mean a closest ally of US or a neighbor is also now recognizing the new global order is emerging. So what you see, what should be that global order?
Well, I think it must, first of all, take into account the interest of every single country on the planet, because the history of international law and conferences shows very clearly whenever the principle of taking the interest of every other into account, it led to peace. And when that principle was violated, like in the Versailles Treaty, or in the Paris Conference of 1919, where important countries were left out, it was just a stepping stone to a new world war. And I think we have reached now a situation where the first time in history we are sitting in one boat.
So coming back to you again, so especially in the context of the Russia and Ukraine conflict, there's a lot of rumors and there are a lot of sayings, and there's a narrative war is also going on. But I want to ask you, what we can expect in 2026 from Russia and Ukraine crisis? Will the both countries will be able to solve this, or it will be more complicated?
Well, I think that any ultimate solution of this conflict will take much more time than just 1 year. Because definitely, even if we have the end of the military confrontation, there'll be a very long aftertaste. And we will have to live with that for many, many years. However, I think it is not impossible to manage de-escalation and even some kind of end to the military confrontation.
Oh, that's
it might.
That's a good news.
And I think, that might happen already over this year. We cannot take it for granted, of course, but I wouldn't rule out such an option. Because finally the sides started to discuss specific arrangements for the settlement. And this is already a major step ahead, though, of course, their positions are still very different from each other. And there are many people, especially in Europe, who do not want to see this conflict stopping.
I will come back to you, Doctor. My team has told me that Madam Helga has rejoined us. So, Madam, you are talking about the architect of a new world order. So you were just talking about the fairness and the opportunity for everybody. So what more you want to add on that?
Well, I think that the fact that the international system is collapsed now brings on the table very immediately the issue of how is the human species capable of giving ourselves a system of self-governance where we can, survive on a durable basis, or are we are not animals. We are not in the jungle where the strongest eats the weaker one. And I think, I have issued an initiative already after the special military operation in Ukraine started in 22, where I said that development means that we need to overcome geopolitics. Geopolitics has been the reason for 2 world wars.
And you are paying a price for that. Your name has been put on the most wanted list, and you are blacklisted at many forums.
Yes, but in reality, what I'm saying is also in the interest of Ukraine. So I think people have to really realize that we have reached a point in human history where either we start to think about the one humanity first, and that no nation has the right to have an interest which is in contradiction to the interest of the one humanity. If we make that mental jump, we can solve any problem. It's like a different method of thinking, where you basically say we are the one human species. We have for the first time the possibility to completely self-destruct, because if it ever comes to the use of nuclear weapons, it will lead to a global nuclear war. And I do not believe that we can have tactical nuclear wars and that tactical nuclear wars can be won. I have made many discussions with Ted Postol, who is an eminent scientist and probably the best rocket expert in the world. And he has made many arguments of why once you use one nuclear weapons, it is the logic of such a war that all weapons eventually will be used. And if that happens, then there will be no human race left. And I think nowadays politicians, are much too light-minded in saying, let's just throw some more weapon systems into the situation. Let's give Ukraine long-range missiles. And there is this big dispute about the 91 drones attack on the residence of President Putin, which is denied by many people in the West, but the Russians have provided evidence that it did come from Ukraine. I don't think people realize
that was a dangerous escalation. That was a dangerous.
if this would have been successful, we probably would not be sitting here anymore.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean,
You are right.
it would have been the decapitation of the strongest nuclear power on the planet, which right now is Russia, and it would have triggered, in all likelihood, a global nuclear war. And people are playing with these things, and I think it is something we have to wake the populations up, because I think right now, given the fact that the governments seem to be not capable of addressing the problem, I think we need a strong international peace movement, a civil society movement, where every citizen has to start to take responsibility, because we are.
Whenever you start a peace movement, and you know better than me, then you are the part of the hit list, and you have been blacklisted. You are still on their hit list. So because you are promoting peace in the Ukraine, you are promoting peace in the Eurasia and everywhere. So now going back to Dr. Andrew Kantonov, as Madam Helga was talking about attack on the President Putin's residence, I think that was a shocking news for me and any other sensible person in the world. So we want to understand how the Russia absorbed that and show the patience, because that was a dangerous escalation.
Well, I think that these days we are getting used to Ukrainian strikes deep in the Russian territory. So it's not really something completely new. But of course, an attempt to hit the president's residence was quite shocking. I think that the question which people ask themselves here in Moscow is whether the Ukrainian side could have done it without a significant Western engagement, because of course many experts argue that Ukrainians do not have the technical capacities in terms of targeting and launching and monitoring
and
such missile attacks.
And satellites.
Yeah, satellites. So the question is to what extent this responsibility should or should not be shared by Western partners of Ukraine. Definitely nobody wants escalation right now. And I think that neither in Moscow nor in Washington they are ready to get into a direct military confrontation with each other. But the longer this conflict lasts for, the higher the chances are that at some point we will get into such escalation with absolute unpredictable consequences.
And I think when you say the USA does not want to escalate or engage in the war, I don't believe so. That is I just want to differ from you, because if they wanted to do so, why they have changed the name, the Ministry of Defense, to the Ministry of War? I think they are in love of war. They really want a war, but nobody is entertaining their request.
Well, I think that I cannot really oppose this view. Definitely, if you look at the budget of this Ministry of War and the current plans of President Trump, definitely some of these plans are quite scary, because definitely he's not interested in arms control at all. He's not interested in any negotiations on strategic stability.
You have a water? We will come back to you. So, Madam Helga, so the same question to you. So when US is on the one side, they're portraying they don't war, but they are specifically only country on the earth which have a ministry of a war. So how do you guys see that?
Well, it forebodes nothing good, in my view. President Trump won the election by promising that he would cut the defense budget in half, that he would end all wars, that he would not start new ones. And if you look at the situation now, in this year, there were half a dozen military strikes against other countries. He's increasing the budget of 900 billion for the defense budget. He wants to build it to increase it to 1.5 trillion for 27. likewise, you have an incredible militarization going on in the European Union. Germany wants to become the strongest army of Europe, which is causing nerve-wracking reactions even in France, who are worried because, historically Germany did not play such a great role, and people have not forgotten that. So I think we are looking at a situation where the economic system of the West is doing poorly. Europe is collapsing. The German economy is in a free fall. The US is doing a little bit better, but also, if you compare, for example, the American economy with that of China, you can see that also the American infrastructure is in terrible condition. So, what they are now resorting to, at least I can say that for Europe for sure, they try to compensate for the economic collapse of the physical economy by an unprecedented rearmament program.
Yes.
And, I think this has the danger of becoming a self-fulfilling.
That is the only production capacity they have. Otherwise, their production capacity is very weak.
Yes, I mean, you have bankruptcies and insolvencies practically, like we didn't have it since the Great Depression, at least not since the end of the Second World War. So it is really the policy of Hjalmar Schacht that, you spend for the military, paid in the case of Hjalmar Schacht, it was the MEFO bills, and this time it's called in German Sondervermögen, which has become the non-word of the year because it basically means to create debt for what? For actually destructive purposes, because any euro you invest in the military is a destruction of the economic potential of a society, and it goes along with incredible austerity measures, infrastructure collapsing, the education system is producing less and less good results. The pensions are in danger. The social expenditures are being cut, and the people have to pay. And I think that we have right now a situation where in all Western governments, the population is realizing that the governments are not really representing their interests. This is why you have
even in the German chancellor, while he was in India, he confessed they make a mistake by moving away from the nuclear energy. That is a big confession, because in the past, even in the present, they were opposing the nuclear energy, while with the sane voices was telling them, no, nuclear is a good option, clean, durable. But this country was not listening. But no, yesterday he was in India. He mentioned that they made a mistake because they are buying the most, you can say, expensive energy from the world. Now, coming back to Dr. Andrew Kantonov, hope you are fine now. So we can continue again. So when we look at this situation, what we are talking about, the Ministry of War and their spending, a person or a country which a huge spending, if they don't want a war, so who can trust them? So will Russia will trust that, or China will trust that, or any other country in the world, will they, like Pakistan or any other country, will trust them? They don't want a war?
Well, I think that, again, I might be dead wrong here, but I think that Trump doesn't care at all about who trusts him and who does not. He believes that he can overspend and overperform any potential adversary. He's not really interested in arms control or any security arrangements with other countries. I think that Trump is pursuing a policy of what I would call strategic isolationism. He believes that the United States can do it on its own, without engaging other nations. And I think this is a mistake. I think that it is very difficult to deal with the leadership that is profoundly unpredictable and cannot be trusted. If you look at China, for instance, they have just signed a trade deal with the United States for a year, and now the United States tells China that it can impose additional 25% tariffs because China buys too much oil from Iran. How can you build your trade relations with a nation if the nation might change its mind literally overnight. It's impossible, even for purely commercial reasons. It is very difficult. But I think that President Trump does not care that much about the rest of the world. He believes that everybody will have to accept the rules of the game that he offers to the world. He believes that he's the only person who might set these rules. And definitely, in the end of the day, that might produce a powerful anti-Trump coalition, even from his own partners and allies. I think it might be a dangerous policy for the United States if you push the envelope too much, and if you insist that you are the only guy in town and that everybody should listen to you and take orders from you.
I think that is the reason so many allies of US, like South Korea, the South Korean president was in China. So then the Irish prime minister was in China. Then now the Canadian prime minister is in China. Now then the QA is Australian, and the UK prime minister there will be visiting China. So that's why there are actually, it's a distrust of allies of USA, because when the Korean prime minister was there, he said, I am here to mend the relation. So when the Canadian prime minister is there, he is looking to mend the relationship. I think China has proposing an alternative, what Madam Helga was talking about, so everybody win. In this context, the concept of community with a shared future, the President Xi Jinping vision, and the most recently global governance initiative, how these two initiatives can contribute to build that, the vision you are talking about, Madam Helga.
I think the global governance initiative of President Xi Jinping is, in my knowledge, the only one of a government which proposes a new system of international relations. And if you look at the details, it's supposed to give sovereignty, every country having a voice, non-interference, the principles of peaceful coexistence. And I think that initiative should be put on the agenda in a much more open way. I think there should be conferences about it, initiated, if possible, by the BRICS. The SCO could put it on the table. They could invite all countries, including European countries, including the United States, because I think from some place the initiative must come to bring forward an architecture which solves this problem. And our initiative of a new security and development architecture of the Schiller Institute is absolutely in cohesion with the global governance initiative. And I would really hope that from some place, the non-aligned movement, the BRICS country, the African Union, CELAC, ASEAN, there are many institutions who could be the initiator of making such a discussion of the global governance initiative. And I think it would be an intervention which would be absolutely crucial, and it would be so much welcomed by all the people in the world of goodwill.
Sorry, ma'am, I have to interrupt you, because though my producer just communicated, so we have crossed over the time limit. So discussion was so involving. So we did not know that we have spent already the 45 minutes. Thank you, thank you so much, Madam Helga and Dr. Andrew Kantoranov, for your wonderful contribution, and your discussion always bring more questions and always bring more ideas for the cooperation. I wanted to continue, but due to the time limit, we cannot continue. But I think we can continue this discussion some other program. So viewers, when we look at the global level, things are not quite rosy, but still there is a hope. The problem is the distrust and the choices made by some countries to show their hegemonic aspirations or the superiority complex, which in reality is an inferiority complex, are creating the problem. But still, the sane voices like China, Russia, Pakistan, and some other countries, they are trying to mend those scratches, like Pakistan is playing a role to bring peace in the Middle East. Pakistan is trying to act as a security guarantor in the Middle East, and there are the news. So Pakistan played a very important role in the recent conflict between USA and Iran, and Pakistan played a role to stop this conflict, which was going to be end of war, but Pakistan played a role to stop it. I think these choices under these actions are required now more. In this context, we can see how the community with a shared future and a global governance initiative of China can assist the world. Thank you so much. We will come with a new episode next week. Thank you.